Emily was so happy, Carolyn was happy, and her new husband was exactly the type of man that she had always pictured her daughter to be with. She and Brad were happy and proud to watch the wedding that day. Even Bobby's parents had been pleased with the man who would now be the father of their son. At first accepting the fact that Captain Gregg would now be the official father of their grandchildren, they would now have the last name Gregg. The captain had been so kind in the way he had presented his wish that everyone was made to feel as though there were no other good options. They would remain Candy and Bobby's grandparents, and they would keep their name. It was a great solution. The way the children interacted with the captain was the best that any grandparents could wish for. They were happy, talkative, and proud of his every move. One would need to spend only a few minutes in the home called Gull Cottage to feel the love. It was a good place for everyone, and they would come up there often. Carly and Captain Gregg would take a small but happy honeymoon on board a cruise ship. They took the ship out of Boston and would spend a week in Bermuda. Captain Gregg had been there many times, but Carolyn had never been there. He took her around the island and made a point of making sure that they did not go to the tourist traps. See. Carolyn and Daniel had a wonderful cruise. They went up on deck and watched the waves. They held each other tight and just enjoyed the sea air. Carolyn had learned to love the smell of the sea air as much as her husband, and as they walked back to their cabin holding each other tight, Candy smiled as she watched her mom and new dad leave for their honeymoon. She had been so proud to be her mom's maid of honor and loved Captain Gregg so much. She remembered her dad so little. He had looked nothing like the captain. He had had blonde hair, blue eyes, and been only about 5'6" tall. He had a kind voice and had a smile that she would never forget. She was glad that she would keep her dad's name along with the captain's. As she climbed into the car with her grandparents, she was happier than she could ever remember. Jonathan had watched his mom and the captain get married with great wonder. He knew that being adopted had been a huge step towards his mom, new dad, and sister becoming a legal family. It had been his teacher who had talked to him about it that had made him understand everything a little clearer. She had told him in a kind voice that his father would have been proud of the fact that he would now be a part of the new family. The best part was that his dad was still his dad. He now had two dads, one in heaven and one on earth. He smiled as he climbed into the car with his grandparents' car and headed towards Philadelphia. He was looking forward to such a good life. Martha pulled up to Gull Cottage and smiled. When they had first moved to Schooner Bay, she and the Muirs had felt like they had belonged there from the beginning. Although somewhat skeptical because of the condition of the home, she had come to love the home and the captain who had now married her best friend and employer. She would enjoy spending time alone for the next week, but was going to miss the family. Carolyn and Captain Gregg had wanted a small wedding, but when they got back, Martha was determined that there would be a party welcoming the new family back. She and Ed and Mrs. Muir's friend Nancy would be working hard all that week to prepare for a party that would come as a surprise to the newlyweds there at the Schooner Bay Fish House. The party was going to be small, but Martha had not felt it right that there not be something special done to invite the new family into town. But the honeymoon was soon over, and as Carolyn and Captain Gregg headed back to Gull Cottage, they were looking forward to their new life as a family. They both were happy to see that Jonathan and Candy had arrived home and that their parents were now in the guest room. The home that Captain Gregg had once called home was once again rented to the school principal, so the guest room would now have to do whenever they had company. Emily was excited to discover that Martha and Nancy had a surprise party planned for her daughter and her new son-in-law. She had felt bad that the wedding had not been larger and that more of their friends had been invited to the wedding. But now she had seen where the party was to be and she was satisfied. The last week had been wonderful. She missed her grandchildren every day, and to have them for a week had been a dream come true. Why, Candy was becoming a young woman right in front of her eyes, and Jonathan had become such a gentleman. She and Brad had been surprised how kind and thoughtful their two grandchildren had been. There was nothing more she wanted for them to be happy. As Captain Gregg and Carolyn settled down to their new life, being back in their home Gull Cottage, and the smell of the ocean filled their nostrils, and the captain headed out onto the balcony where he had spent so much time before. The old telescope that had once belonged to the captain who had built the house had given both of them much pleasure. Carolyn was busy brushing her hair when there was a knock on the door. Carolyn opened the door to find Candy carrying a tray with breakfast for her and the captain to enjoy in the privacy of their own room in bed. Jonathan was carrying the captain's tray. "Come on Mom and Dad, take a seat in the bed. We are here to serve you," they laughed. Emily went by the bedroom and heard the laughter. The new family was happy and so was she. This was to be the first day in their new life. A good life was how it was to be. That Saturday was to be the last night that Carolyn's parents were to be in town, so she and the captain had been thrilled when it had been suggested that they once more went out to dinner at the local restaurant. As they pulled into the driveway, they noticed all the cars. With the style and grace that they both were known for, they were surprised when they found out what Nancy and Martha had done. And her parents and both children had been in on it too. That night they danced the night away and enjoyed every moment with their new community of friends. Even Claymore had been a gentleman. Their new life was a good one.